Thanks again, everybody, for joining us. This is another installment of our Peplink University series. I'm Travis Durick, product manager with Peplink. And as always, we've got Professor Peter West here to talk to us about GPS and all the different ways that you can use GPS within the Peplink products.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to share this too, because a lot of the work we do, especially with mobile health, mobile command vehicles, and fleet tracking with like ambulances and fire trucks and things like that, we get asked a lot about the capabilities of our GPS, and so being able to create a single video that shows off just the magnitude of features that Peplink has built into their ecosystem with GPS is going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be a really enlightening conversation. Because I think you think, oh, GPS, it has it on the map and it shows some where it is, but there's a lot that Peplink has built. And it's going to be, really nice to have all this encapsulated into one video.
Yeah. I mean, there's there's so many different layers and different things will matter to different people, but, it's all related to that location aspect and, just how you want to use that in different ways that you're able to. So, yeah, let's jump in.
Sorry, my slides there. So one of the first things is that Peplink wants us to highlight, which I think is probably one of the coolest unknown things about Peplink GPS is this GPS dead reckoning. And when I say unknown, like prior to a month ago, I didn't know. It was when we were planning for this webinar, and they're like, "Have you played around with the dead reckoning?" And I'm a little spoiled, being in the Peplink ecosystem. I don't have any vehicles that aren't using MBX 5Gs. I've never installed a BR1 Mini on any of my fleet vehicles. And so I've never even noticed that this was even an issue for some people.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's really cool that Peplink has this. And basically with this dead reckoning technology on our dead reckoning supporting hardware, the dead reckoning automatically estimates your current track and fills in the gaps based on last known position, direction, distance, and speed. So if you're driving and you go through a tunnel, it'll simply just keep that going, assuming that you're going that 50 miles an hour or whatever it is, trying to help you through the no GPS space. And what's interesting is when I drive around, I drive around in my Speed Fusion vehicles, the Renegade and the Patriot, and I do go through tunnels, and my GPS never does drop. And so I know that this works. I just never knew that it didn't work on other routers, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's kind of a cool feature that Peplink has added with kind of silently, which is neat. And
yeah,
it is.
On the positive side, it's silent in that you don't have to do anything. If you have the device, it's on and it's working and you have it. But we've been silent about the fact that it's there, and that's just not okay. We need people to know that that's available. That's something that in a lot of cases they've already bought. So
yeah, and it works as low as the BR1 Pro 5G. So we have the BR1 Pro 5G, the BR2 Pro, the Max HD2, which is kind of cool. That's a route I wouldn't have expected to have that technology. And then you have obviously the MBX, HD2 and HD4, the MBX Mini, the Dome series, and the PDX. And so all of these support that GPS dead reckoning. So you don't have to have a $12,000 MBX. You could have just a BR1 Pro 5G and have this dead reckoning on your police cars or ambulances or, things like that as you're traveling around. But it is, that's a really neat feature that, they definitely could create value, especially when you're trying to compare GPS features with also the Speed Fusion and other benefits the ecosystem that Peplink offers.
Yeah, like on that BR1 Pro 5G, again, that's under $1,000. It's a 5G router that's ready for mobile environments. So if you're going up against either a cheaper device or a more expensive device, does that have dead reckoning support? If it's a mobile environment, that might matter a lot.
Exactly. The other thing that Peplink has is GPS forwarding. And it's important here that we should say that it's GPS forwarding to multiple destinations with multiple different configurations. And so you can have, for example, reporting to your CAD server, you can have report to a GPS tracking server, or whatever. So you can have multiple GPS destinations with different time intervals, different protocols. And then you have your NEMA and your TIAP. TAIP.
I don't know. Yeah, I always spell that one out.
Once again, on top of dead reckoning, now you can have GPS forwarding. And so you not only you can have in control cloud management, but we have the ability to send to multiple GPS destinations for your fleet and or different systems that might need to know the GPS location. You don't need to have a whole bunch of GPS receivers. You have one Peplink sending to multiple applications, tracking your fleet. And I think that creates a lot of value as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about like a public safety scenario, you're going to have like a centralized CAD server, that system at dispatch that needs to know where all the vehicles are, and then in the vehicle, you're going to have the CAD console for the officer on their computer in the car, and that thing would like to know where you're at too. So yeah, I mean, you need to feed this to multiple locations, and it's all right there. Pretty straightforward.
Well, we had a really cool scenario too, where people were different divisions. So you have like the county and the state. We've had it. You're sending to different groups as well.
Oh yeah.
So you have like kind of like your little local section versus your larger overview where they're collecting all the information.
So, yeah, that's a good point, because a lot of these agencies, they don't answer to any one, but they work with a lot of different departments.
Co-working with other people.
Yep.
There we go. Geo-fencing is another neat thing that Peplink has built into with our GPS. So if you're using in control, and then you're also using our GPS capabilities, you now have the ability to do geo-fencing, which lets you add notifications, turning on and off Wi-Fi, applying tags based on where you are, and this allows you to do a lot of different things. One of the most things that I use it for on a regular basis is when I pull into my building, my property, my office. I don't want my devices using my SpeedFusion Renegade or the SpeedFusion Patriot Wi-Fi. I want them using my West Networks Wi-Fi in my building. So what I do is when I enter the zone of my parking lot, the Wi-Fi on those devices gets shut down. So it turns off the Wi-Fi when I enter the parking lot, and then when I leave the parking lot, the Wi-Fi turns back on. And that just prevents me from accidentally connecting to the wrong Wi-Fi when I'm in my building. Because if you have a 42G on the roof of your vehicle broadcasting Wi-Fi, it'll easily go inside your building, and you'll accidentally connect that using cellular data instead of your nice high-speed Wi-Fi data.
Yeah, just the fact that you can make tags either appear or disappear, because tags drive so many different configuration parameters in the system. Yeah. So then you kind of sequence those things in to have all kinds of different changes happen when you enter or leave an area. And I think the other thing that's just really cool is just firmware updates. Like, don't do a firmware update if this vehicle's out in the field. Only do it when it's in the geofence back parked at depot, right? So if you've got critical vehicles out there moving around, you're not going to interrupt them because you don't know when they're going to be back. You just know where back is, and
yeah,
that's a just easy way to use the GPS.
And then the email notifications allow you to see when something enters or leaves an area. I mean, if you have a multi-$100,000 command vehicle or mobile operations, you might want to know, hey, does this leave the area on an unapproved time? Send an email note to the whoever's in charge of that area to make sure that vehicle is supposed to leave.
I just email, or those HTTPS notifications, so you can tie this to some other system too, so you can do the integration if you need that trigger to set some other thing in motion.
Yeah, so geofencing is definitely neat, especially like I said with the tagging and the Wi-Fi and the notifications. And I've had customers get really creative with the tagging functionalities. I've had some customers get really creative with tagging, because your tagging applies to outbound policies, firewall policies, bulk configurations, and so we've had some really interesting use cases where they've gotten really creative with geofencing and tagging and making changes to the device based on where it's located.
Mm-hmm. Yep, which can make, if you've got 1,000 locations, you can automate a whole bunch of stuff again and get back to that kind of zero touch provisioning concept and just use the GPS as the differentiator then.
And then, the next thing that Peplink GPS tracking does is fleet tracking. So if we are using Peplink's In Control 2 in combination with any of our GPS or mobile devices, you now have the ability to have fleet tracking built right into In Control 2. And it is incredibly powerful. And there's some features in this that not only can you use it for tracking and knowing where your devices are, but you can also see, you can click on that little blue line, which I'll show you during my live demo, but you can click on that blue line and actually know how fast the vehicle was going, what the cellular capabilities were at that location. And so there's a lot of data that's actually being tracked at the same time, which gives you a lot of visibility into what's going on. One of my most beloved stories related to this is I was working with a company out in Arizona. Funny enough, I'm in Arizona right now, but I was working with a company out in Arizona, and if you go out into the northern parts of Arizona, it's very rural, and so there's only a couple cell towers for a very large area. And the customer had called me and they said, "Hey, look, I'm having a hard time. We were on the internet, we were working, and now we're not. We're just dead in the water." And so I pulled up the fleet tracking. I clicked on WAN performance and WAN analytics, saw that the cellular connectivity was green, and then went yellow, and then blue, and then red. And I was like, "Oh," I was like, "I see that you're right next to a building. Can you back the vehicle up a couple hundred feet?" And they go, "Oh yeah, it's a big parking lot. Let me move to the other side." And I said, "Yeah, if you move back about 100, maybe 150 feet, I see that you were connected." And sure enough, they backed up, and then the vehicle got connected to the internet, and they were back up and running. So even though I was in Florida, the vehicle was in Arizona, I was able to use the GPS fleet tracking capabilities and the cellular tracking capabilities to be able to see that when that router went offline and where it was when it went offline. And so, hey, if you can move to that other area, you'll be able to get reconnected. It was just kind of a really neat thing for me because it was one of the first mobile Peplink routers. This was years ago, but it was one of the first ones I deployed. And it was like, boom, this amazing feature just was available to solve that problem.
Yeah, I love that because so many times you go to look at these maps and it's kind of like you're looking at a chalk line, right? It's like, why did it suck is all that I'm able to answer. Like, oh, because I lost signal, right? But in this case, you're using it to make it actually work again, not just explain why it didn't work. And so, yeah, that's a great way to use that and be able to actually give them some, quick advice out in the field that mattered.
And the details that it provides, this GPS fleet tracking, is pretty intense. I mean, you can see the speed, the altitude, and even more details about where this vehicle is and what it's doing. And it's all, I mean, what's crazy to me is it's just there. I mean, I kind of beat up on the licensing stuff, but it's just there. I mean, this is just part of the ecosystem. It's just part of what Peplink offers. And it blows my mind, some of these features that they just add.
Yep, and that's exactly our purpose. Is like this feature, that feature won't matter to every single customer, but if you're in warranty and subscription, you've got it. You don't have to think about it. It's just there.
And I mentioned this just a few minutes ago, but part of our WAN analysis capabilities or WAN quality reports is the ability to use that GPS tracking to actually see very specific detailed WAN quality reports using the GPS. And so you can track, and I use this when I'm doing for site surveys. If someone calls me and says, "Hey, I want to do a site survey of a particular area," I'll say, "Okay, give me 4 or 5 addresses." I take my Speed Fusion Renegade. I'll have Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T as well as my Starlink. And then I drive. I just get in the car and I drive. I drive to each destination. Then I pull up the GPS tracking and I can see the quality of AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile and Starlink as I progress through that area to see where my disconnects occur. And I can tell the customer, "Hey, this part of the parking lot is better than this part of the parking lot." Or if you were to, as I was pulling in, I noticed that this area was much better than that area. And so I highlight specific areas where the connection might be better for them to park or to location for the day. And for me, it's so easy. I mean, the MBX is installed in my Sprinter. I've got the antennas on the roof. I just drive and then pull up PowerPoint and copy and paste. And so I find that to be, a really powerful capability, especially for troubleshooting. If you're managing a large fleet of vehicles, it's so hard to go every single minute of every day, what's going on. And this allows you to go, if someone puts in a ticket, hey, I lost internet. Well, you can see the date and the time and the person. So you can pull that vehicle up, go to that date and time and see what were they doing? Where were they? What was their connection? What internet connections were they on? And you can see this historical information that allows you to understand what happened yesterday. So if I don't get to that incident ticket until today, I still have that data from yesterday. And that's important. That's really important for help desk operations.
The other thing that I really like is just, even if you don't have that absolute clarity of like, this is the time when my problem was, if you know just roughly, you can use the tools and really narrow it down to only the places where there are problems really quickly. So you don't have to have all the information to really get into the weeds of it and find where the problems are quickly.
The other thing that I thought was really cool, it's been around for a little while since they integrated the time server. I want to say like 712, I think. We've had time server.
Remember.
So anyways, we've had time server for a little while, but now we have this GPS time source. So you can actually use GPS as your time source if you'd like to, instead of syncing with like an online presence. And this is really good, especially if you're in low bandwidth requirement areas. You can sync with GPS and have much less bandwidth utilization or reliability on the internet to use for that time source. And so being able to choose your GPS as your time sync is a great feature on these MAX routers.
Yeah, it's ultimately probably going to be the most accurate time source you can have out in the field. And so, use that first if you've got it. And that's kind of how it works too, is if for some reason GPS isn't there, it will fall back to the traditional, network-based synchronizations. But if it's got that GPS clock, it'll use that more precise source then.
And then we also have the GPS Netclock Server. So Peplink's added our own NTP server. So not only can you sync your GPS time, now the Peplink can be a time server for other devices. And that is just, we talk about, once again, this ecosystem or these features, the ability just to sync with time, have a great time server. Now your Peplink router is your time server. So your Peplink router, which provides you internet, also is your fleet tracking and GPS synced time server. And so you can actually turn on the time server, set it up, and then in DHCP, if you just turn on your, point to the Peplink as your time server, then you'll be able to do that.
Yeah, if you've got cameras, phones, or if you're in a public safety or a healthcare environment where the timestamps of those systems matters too, you can point all of those devices to that LAN IP of the Peplink, and that can be your authoritative, accurate GPS-based net clock. So you've got that on device, basically bulletproof time sync, so that you're recording every little incident at the exact time that it happened.
Yeah, I think especially everything moving to SSL these days. Timestamps and time accuracy is really important for certificate management. So keeping that accurate and having it locally on the device is just another great feature that Peplink has added to the ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, those are the basic features. Now I'm going to just kind of show where these are, because that's part of what I like to do is advertise the features, but then also highlight where these things exist in the real world. And so I have, that's my UBR for today. Okay. So I'm using the Renegade. The Renegade is my Vienna Renegade little Peplink Sprinter unit. If you haven't seen pictures of it, I've got it on, kind of on LinkedIn and stuff. And you can see I've got my AT&T, my T-Mobile, my Verizon, and my Starlink FHP. And I can see that it's sitting here in Gainesville, Florida right now. And so the GPS tracking here. So I went to the device, and I went to last Friday when I was up in Chicago, and you can see here's my last Friday when I was up in Chicago driving around. If I click on this little full screen icon here. Oh, there it is. And then I can zoom in. And if I click on a piece of time right here, I can see the date stamp, how fast I was driving, my latitude, longitude, and my altitude. And so I can see where this vehicle was, how fast it was going at any point in time, which is kind of cool because if you're worried about, you know, fleet management and speeding tickets and or where you are, you literally can see exactly how fast this vehicle was going as I went down the road, which is, I mean, it's especially with a large fleet, that's a pretty neat deal because you get the exact timestamp and the speed. But if I go up here and go to reports, WAN quality reports, I can get a little different view of this information. So I can choose last Friday, like I mentioned already, and then let me just say show all. And so this is my Starlink, but so I can have my Starlink, my AT&T, my T-Mobile, and my Verizon. So I can pull up my AT&T. There we go. And I can see my AT&T connection there. And then I can see this heat map that is the entire trip that I took. And so you can see right here, this is my AT&T service. And so what I like to do is compare like AT&T against Verizon and T-Mobile. And you'll see these dots, they have three rings. You have the outer ring, the inner middle ring, and the center ring. And that is your, and you might be able to correct me if I'm wrong here, Travis, but it's your signal strength, your quality, and then your signal to noise ratio, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. And so we have that, you know, right there, and we can see that, and then I can click on that spec, and now I've get let me see if I can zoom in on this a little bit for you guys. There we go. So you can see right here, it shows me what cell IDs are there, what carrier, what bands I'm using, band 2, 14, and 30. I've got my signal LTE-A, my latitude, longitude, and you have all of my different signal quality and latency specifications right there for that location. And so I can dig into these locations and see exactly what's going on with AT&T at that location. And then once I look and analyze AT&T, I can scroll down and look at Verizon, for example. Wait for it to refresh. There we go. So now I have Verizon, and I can zoom in on this area and see that same details for Verizon and what it's doing. And so the WAN quality reports are incredibly nice because that links with that GPS, but it also lets me know what the quality of those services are as I'm traveling around. And I find that to be just, it's infinitely valuable for the type of work that I do, especially when I'm trying to figure out the best carriers in an area and what's going on and why they might not be. Because, you know, it's like if you notice, all these have a green outer circle. I mean, they almost all get a good signal. It's not the signal, it's the quality of the service that matters. And that's where it's really, really different. You think that it doesn't matter, but it really does, because that outer, that you think, oh, I've got 4 bars or I got 3 bars. Well, how good is the signal beyond just the bars? And then I can pull
my favorite thing to do with that map at the bottom there, I want to just have you try uncheck the filters. Just leave latency checked, but just uncheck the rest of them. So what I like to do here is this is showing basically every spot where your latency went above that threshold then. So you've got a 500 millisecond threshold or, yeah. So then you can get right to the bottom of like, okay, here's where I probably had problems, right? And then you start kind of look at that conversation backwards of like, was it signal or was it something else, right?
Yeah.
Something impacted my quality here.
That's crazy.
But sometimes that threshold can be harder or easier to find. Try doing the greater than 500 on the latency. Yeah, here we go. So now those are where that carrier had problems or potentially.
Okay, so
right?
this is where T-Mobile had a greater than 500 milliseconds of latency throughout my trip.
And usually it aligns heavily with signal or something like that, but not always, right? So
yeah, and you can see what is nice is you can see that the signal actually at these areas, all of them have a red outer circle, so they all have that. Yep. They were all not so great on the signal quality.
Yep, not very mysterious, right? We know why that went high on that
one. So then I'm going to move over to geofencing just to show this off. Geofencing is absolutely crazy. So once again, Speed Fusion, Renegade, settings, and then geofencing. And then here I have this disable Wi-Fi. And so it's just around my office here. And so what I have is action, enable, disable Wi-Fi. And it says on leave, enable on leave, disable on enter. And so as soon as I enter this area, so I pull in this street, and as soon as I hit through this area, the Wi-Fi turns off, and that way it's not interfering with my devices that are inside my building. But I also have the ability to do email notifications. So I can say, send an email to peter@westnetworks.com if I enter or leave this area. I can also do it like Travis was saying, we can do an HTTPS notification, so we can push this to our system. If you have a support desk or event log tracking system that supports JSON pushes, you can just push that right there, and that way at least it tracks, hey, the vehicle entered, the vehicle left. Now you have timestamps of when the vehicle came and entered and left a particular area. This could be really good, I think, for public safety, right? The vehicle's at the police station or the hospital, wherever, and then when they leave, it creates sends a notification to their system and documents that timestamp, and when it comes back, it documents that timestamp.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have device tagging, and so this is kind of neat. So I can say, for example, enter tags to add on enter. So I can say at office. Tags to add on leave, I can say, deployed. So if I enter that area, it's going to add a tag at office. So if I have a whole bunch of vehicles and I want to show all the vehicles that are at the office, I can just filter by that tag. I can also apply policies like, hey, turn off Speed Fusion or disable, routing, because if you're at the office, I don't need this. And then there's this checkbox, apply firmware. So if I have firmware scheduled, only turn on the firmware, only allow firmware pushing when I'm at the office. That way these guys are out in the field. They're not getting firmware pushed in the middle of doing a deployment.
Yep. If I'm at the office, I'm just going to use the Wi-Fi as WAN to connect my vehicle to the office instead of burning cellular gigs when I'm right there next to my landline and Wi-Fi network.
Yeah. And so then it pushes that out. And now I've got that GPS tracking capability. For the GPS tracking too, you can add zones. So for example, I can say location A for one. I can add a circular area CSV upload or a path. And so you can define an area, like I could define the city of Gainesville by a path, draw a path and say, hey, if I'm inside this area, that's my area. Or I could just draw that circle. So if I wanted to get really particular, I could draw a path that's around that block of of the office, and then have it turn off or enable based on that path. Or if I want to say my vehicle is only this particular vehicle is only supposed to cover, Alachua County, which is the county that my city is in, I could draw a path around Alachua County and basically say, once it leaves Alachua County, send an alert notification like, hey, this is left jurisdiction, or it's going where it's not supposed to go.
Yep, and those are things where I've seen people, use existing geospatial files that they've got, and we've been able to work with them to get those imported if they're that specific. But yeah, it's just a lot of ways that you can use that to just not have to like draw something that's not very precise. If you've got the better data, we can figure that out usually.
Exactly. And then we have GPS forwarding. So GPS forwarding is the ability to not only work with in control, but also work with your own CAD system or whatever platform that your application that you might be using. And you can add a lot of destinations. So, the one thing that you can't change is whether it's going to be NEMA or a TIAP. So you do TIAP and PV and CP, or you can do NEMA, and then you can check your sentence types. And then, so you can't do those individually per destination. And then you can add a vehicle ID if you'd like, like the Renegade, if I wanted to. And then I can add my destination, your IP address, your port, TCP or UDP, and then the report interval. So how many seconds you want it to send it. And then whether or not it's stationary right there. So there's your stationary options as well. And so once again, you can send this to a lot of different destinations based on your company's needs, solving those, those unique challenges from needing a whole bunch of different GPS receivers to serve one purpose. If you're a programmer, Peplink has one of the coolest APIs in the world. At least I think they do. I am biased. They don't call me Professor Pete for nothing. But there is a full featured API, and there's actually two APIs. We have the in control API, and then we have the balance API. So you can write your API to interface with in control and use in control's authentication protocols, or you can have it write directly to that router and query GPS and things like that. And since it's a GPS conversation, I'll talk about just about GPS. But I just did a little quick search, and you can see there's 8 different sections here for GPS. And so if you're curious about this, you can simply literally just Google Peplink in control API. It'll take you right to it. Hit OK, and then you can see all the different commands they have. But you can query the device's location. If it's a fixed location, you can actually update the location, the GPS location via the API. And so there's a lot of things that you can do inside of the API. And I just wanted to showcase this as well, showing off the breadth of capabilities that exist with the GPS and in control, as well as the balance router.
Yeah, and the API thing is something we've seen people use in so many different ways. Again, we've got people with, either robotics or vehicle systems where they're using the local API to, utilize that GPS feed somehow locally. And then again, other people using the cloud side. Everything that you've shown here, Peter, already is available via the APIs to, get all those maps, all that cellular signal data. That's all available on the back end too. So.
And that's important, right? In control is basically the API into the devices. And so everything you see on in control is just an API. And we've had customers write their own interfaces. I mean, their whole entire kind of in control for their own private use. And so that API is open and available to be used. And that's just crazy that Peplink just has that available without any licensing or anything like that.
Yeah.
A good question from Jose is that GPS dead reckoning is not available on the Max HD2 Dome. Well, the HD2 Dome is brand new, so I'm going to assume it is because it's based on the BR2. But
I think he's probably talking. We've had an HD2 Dome for a long time on the LTE side.
Oh, so the LTE Dome. I was thinking the new 5G. Sorry.
Yep.
So do we know if it's available on that?
On the newest ones, if it's 5G, yes. Most of the 5G radios don't have a GPS chipset in them, and so we're putting an external third-party chipset with that dead reckoning support on those devices. So
the HD2 Dome. So the old one probably doesn't support the dead reckoning.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
I would expect the old one does not. The LTE versions of the domes.
Somebody asked about 8.3 and GPS not working. That's more tech support. If you want to reach out to either Travis or myself, or your partner, we'd be more than happy to help you troubleshoot that. But yeah, we can just open a ticket or take a look at your configuration for tech support purposes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, is there a limit on the number of boundaries you can
issue
set
with the firmware for sure?
Yeah. Is there a limit with the number of boundaries that can be set up via geofencing? I don't know. I've never been. I don't know if there. I mean, I'm sure there's some sort of technical
There's some
limitation.
limit, but yeah, I don't know
Yeah,
where that is either.
yeah, not anything that we've ever hit. I mean, we have customers with a lot of geofencing policies, so there might be some sort of item limit, but not anything small. It's not going to be a small number. Sorry, I can't answer that exact specification. We could probably reach out to Michael and ask if there's an actual limit.
You can always push the feedback button in control and highlight the thing that you're curious about that, because
that actually is a really good point. If you in control, just pull this up, go to GPS. If you just click this feedback button right here in the geofencing, you could simply just ask that question right here, and the in control team could be able to answer that. So you just click this and just say, hey, is there a limit to the number of geofencing locations? And then they'd be able to answer that question for you.
Yeah.
Set the vehicle stationary, absolute contains something strippers on left geofencing. Huh. That one, the guy asked it, he said if a vehicle is stationary and it loses connectivity, it can trigger a left geofence or enter geofence. I don't really, because it's losing connectivity, I'm not exactly sure how that's handled. Do you by any chance know, Travis?
I think I don't have a good answer. I mean,
yeah, I'll have to follow up on that one, because I hate to say that, but I've got 12 different internet connections on my they don't really lose internet for me. I've never experienced that particular issue there, but it shouldn't though, because when it's offline, like if you have a router that's offline, the GPS shows it in that area.
Yeah,
so
it's odd that it would like register a movement if it didn't have a precise fix that said it
I would
was
say
there.
that might be a really good report to Michael as well, is just clicking that feedback button here and just letting them know that you're getting false reports based on offline status, because it shouldn't. The GPS saves the last known location, so it's going to stick that last known location. So there might be some scenario there where it's picking up incorrectly.
I've definitely seen scenarios like it, especially in northern latitudes, where you'll get some odd drift if you're parked next to a big obstruction, and you can see some weird kind of like zigzaggy patterns on stationary objects sometimes. But maybe looking at like they actually did move, but not so much related to startup shutdown at all. It's different than what was described there, I think. But anyways.
So dead reckoning is not an enable. You can't turn it on and off. It's sort of just on. So if you're having gaps that might be related to connectivity, not GPS, like if it can't report to in control, so you might want to look at that, the WAN quality alert, and see if you're losing connectivity or the device is going offline. Otherwise, open a ticket and maybe check your settings. Because you don't turn the GPS dead reckoning, you don't turn it on and off.
Correct.
Travis, this is definitely a question for you. Do we have a small, low-cost device that can only do GPS tracking without Wi-Fi? Would that be like a BR1 mini core?
The cores don't generally have GPS, so there's just not really a BR1 mini would be the closest device. But
does the SFV have it? Oh no, because that's not low cost.
Right.
Yeah, those are kind of expensive. Yeah, I would do the BR1 mini, right? And then just turn off Wi-Fi is what I would do, because that's going to be your least expensive. Sometimes these specialty devices are a little bit more expensive than the just turning off the Wi-Fi.
Yep, or you can even just physically cap the Wi-Fi port if it's really that big of a concern.
Yeah. Discover date range and control limit. This would definitely be a question for Travis / the in control team. I do agree with you, Chris, on this. But Chris asked a really good question about how long this data stays. Chris says he knows the date ranges in control are limited to 30 days. It'd be great to remove this limit, like visualizing a full trip of logs for boaters and RVers. The only thing I would say, Chris, is that's why we have that GPS forwarding. So like we actually play around with that ourselves, and I just send that data to a GPS receiver, and then I can play with that data myself for long-term travel. But I don't know if Peplink would have any interest in removing the data limit, the storage limits there.
Yeah, I mean, just
beyond 30
practically
days.
a lot of data to manage for us. So, I mean, I think along the lines of what you were saying, Peter, some way to automate the export of it, or, get that out there in a way that you can still use it. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not trying to shut it down, but, just in its current state, it's just a lot more data to process.
It is a lot of data. Think about sending every
Yeah.
couple of seconds. I will say that there are free GPS there are free GPS receivers out there. Literally, you could download it and then send that GPS location, and then you could create I know that my marketing team, because we have our different Speed Fusion installation vehicles, we're looking at creating live maps that show like, oh, Peter's going here, then he's going here, and so we're looking at creating more long-term, because once again, that even querying the data is on a shorter date range. It's like today or yesterday, and so I want to be able to say, hey, here's my trip this week, and then oh, we installed a BR2 and we did this and we did that. And so we're using the GPS forwarding feature to go into our own GPS software, and then we just put that into Google Maps API.
Yeah, and maybe it's more, maybe it's more about the goals of what Chris is looking for too. It's not so much I need all the details from a year ago. I just need to know where I was a year ago, and we can drop the rest of the details after a month. I don't know, right? I think there's probably a better solution here for sure, but it's not just as easy as make the date range longer, I guess is all I'm trying to say.
Sam asked a good question. He says, does the geofencing turn off the Wi-Fi WAN or just the Wi-Fi LAN? I think it turns off the Wi-Fi, which would turn off WAN. Because I think it triggers the off. Yeah, I don't know. I will, Sam, if you don't mind, I would love to answer that question for you. If you want to email Peter@westnetworks.com or Travis@peplink.com, I would love to answer that question for you more specifically. I do apologize. I actually don't know if it turns off, because I know it triggers the off. It's like when you do it, it triggers.
I know it will shut the AP off for sure.
Yeah, so it shuts off the AP, which I would assume would turn off Wi-Fi WAN. But I actually have never tested that.
Yeah, I just don't
know. If anybody's in this chat that's watching, I'd love to know. But yep, there he goes. Sam just said I try to turn off both. Yeah, I was thinking it would. I didn't want to say that for sure, but it does turn off the AP. So if you don't want it to turn it off, then that's where tagging comes into place, because you have Wi-Fi SSIDs that go by tagging. So if I did a tag, like for example, I just added this tag. If I go Wi-Fi on some devices with the deployed tag, well, now that SSID is only applied to the deployed. And so literally when the deployed tag is removed, the SSID removed, that would keep the Wi-Fi radio on if you want Wi-Fi WAN. So that's where you could use the tagging to keep the Wi-Fi radio on, but turn off the Wi-Fi SSID.
Yeah, and I actually like that distinction, or the ability to have that distinction, because I know I've got one customer who has a whole bunch of devices that end up at a depot right next to a military base, and they do not want that Wi-Fi energy coming off that bus depot. And so in that case, it has to be shut off the radio, not just, shut the SSID off. So I can see why you would have two different ways to get almost the same result there.
Yeah. Like I said, anything else? Once again, you can email Peter@westnetworks.com or Travis@peplink.com. If anybody has any other questions related to this, I'd love to answer those. We do have a couple more minutes. Otherwise, we could give you guys back a few minutes of time. So I'll wait just a minute for any additional questions. But yeah, but otherwise, thank you so much for joining. If you have any suggestions for our next month's topic, if we choose your suggestion, we'll send you some cool swag. Hold on one second. Somewhat unrelated. Okay, hold on one second. I Joseph asked a question that's sort of not related. Joseph, I would either reach out to your partner, unless you are the partner, or if you want to reach out to myself or just Peplink support, we'd be more than happy to look at. Your scenario should not have happened. So there might be some sort of configuration issue and or failover scenario that didn't get set up properly, but we'd be more than happy to troubleshoot that for you. That by definition of the failover, that shouldn't have happened. So just either reach out to Peplink support, your partner, or if you don't have anybody, you can reach out to me and I'll be more than happy to help you get that looked at. Awesome. Well, thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody. And once again, if you have any topics for a webinar, if I choose your webinar, I'll send you some free swag. So please email it to either Travis@peplink.com or Peter@westnetworks.com, and we'd be more than happy to take that. If you have questions or need support, once again, you can reach out to either one of us as well, and we can get you in contact with the right person. We understand this is a kind of an open-ended webinar. So if we can't help you, we will definitely get you in contact with the person that can help you.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Travis. Thank you for hosting this with me. And
yeah, always a pleasure, Peter. Thank you.
Now have a great day. I'm gonna go install some BR2 Pro 5Gs this afternoon. So,
heck yeah. All right, folks. Take care.
Have a good one.